Hey folks, Steve here, talking the true history of the Kelly Gang, a film title that lies, ladies and gentlemen. Um, there's not a lot of truth in many regards to the true history of the Kelly Gang. I wrote a short review when the film came out, and I did say that there is something about this film that gives a more truthful Ned Kelly than what we've seen in the past. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, the Kelly Brigade, the pro Kelly Brigade, they went after me. They went after me, ladies and gentlemen, um, asking why I would call such an inaccurate film truthful when there's nothing of truth here. But I think the way that Ned Kelly is presented as somewhat of a crazy, violent, colonial punk, I think there's some truth to that. And I think that's probably what Ned was like. I mean, this whole idea of this romantic Ned Kelly is a bit on the nose, I think. And I question how accurate that actually is. Like, this is a guy that did stage a a um, a train crash to kill 50 police, and I don't know if that's such a happy kind of guy. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, enough of that. And true history, provocative title, I would say, very provocative title. I can get into that later. Now, what we've got here are a couple of the posters that you can see. So this is a UK poster um, with a British flag. Yep, look at that for marketing. Put it in the British flag. Thank you very much. With the cast, you've got George Mackay, front and centre, front of the cast. He's Ned, and he doesn't have a beard. Ned famously had his beard with photographs of Ned when he was caught. Big, long, bushy beard. He's shaven and he's got a mullet. What's with that? A mullet and no facial hair. Maybe that's to speak to the kids of today. Make him look a bit like a bit of a hipster. And I'll get into the hipster Ned later, even though I do walk around the city and I see a lot of the cool kids with facial hair. So maybe they should have rethought the facial hair. Anyway, UK poster. You can't really say it's a bit busy. The UK poster. There's a lot going on here. There's Ned in his armor, his iconic armor down the bottom, and I should have. It's a bit of remiss of me not to have introduced who the hell Ned Kelly is. Some of you, I'm aware, may not be aware of who Ned Kelly even is. He was a bushranger, ladies and gentlemen. He wrote a couple of letters, which I'll speak about because the letter was was the source of inspiration for the novel, which was the source of inspiration for the movie, the most famous, called the Jerilderie Letter. Anyway, he killed a couple of policemen. He robbed a couple of banks, and he created a siege where he was going to, like I said, derail a train, dressed in armor. He was going to rush the train, and he's going to shoot dead all the police who didn't survive the train crash. However, things didn't go according to plan for dear old Ned, and he ended up getting caught and ending up in the Melbourne jail, which is right behind RMIT University. Fun fact, Building 9 of Media and Communication at RMIT, so they used to have these mass graves for all the convicts who died. Some hanged and some just died of natural causes. And that grave stretched out to where Building 9 currently is. And if you're in Building 9, ladies and gentlemen, and you're an RMIT student, and Building 9 is the School of Media and Communication, the film school, and you got a tap on your shoulder, or there's a door that closes, and you're thinking, I feel like there's someone around, but I can't see anyone. Well, that someone could be the ghost of Ned Kelly, who's coming to haunt you, or maybe he just wants to be your friend. Who says all ghosts are bad spirits? I'm sure, as the film Beetlejuice has taught us all, ladies and gentlemen, that there can be good ghosts and also the bad ghosts. Anyway, Ned Kelly, he could be around Building 9, and he could be there to haunt you or to help you in your endeavours as you navigate the system that is RMIT University. This is the Australian poster. So the film was released on Stan, which is a streaming service. We like Stan because they promote a lot of Australian content. They put a lot of money behind Stan content, movies, television series, a lot of good stuff, good Australian stuff appears on Stan. So if you're going to subscribe to one service and you like your Australian content, put your money down for Stan. I don't know why it's called Stan. It's a bit masculine, isn't it? To call a streaming service Stan. Anyway, Stan's probably better than a lot of the other streaming services. But this poster, I can't say again, it's really telling me much. Nothing really to suggest that there's anything Ned Kelly going on here. There's Rusty Crowe, which we'll get to soon. Essie Davis, we love Essie Davis, right? Essie Davis, of course, the star of the Babadook, terrific Australian movie, and the crime mystery show on the ABC. She's very good, Essie Davis. She's good in everything. She's also good in she's in a few of Justin Kurzel's films because they are married. So director and Essie Davis are married. So she does often appear in his films. She was also in Nitram as well, where she was very good. Anyway, I'm not giving these posters much, I've got to say. If you're in the advertising business, or you're thinking about advertising, now is the time, because clearly these people don't know how to do a film poster. Well, let's have a look at a couple of the other posters around the world. Now, this is Japan, George Mackay, still with the British flag, but now he's got his top off. So he's looking very buff, and he's looking a little bit, it's an interesting look on his face. He doesn't really, I wouldn't really say it's an attractive look. He doesn't really look, he looks just odd. Like, oh, I didn't know you were taking my photo, and here we are with my top on. Anyway, so that's a Japanese photo. And in Brazil and Spain, they had the same poster, which Ned, with his gun, you got Rusty Crowe there, also with his gun drawn. And then you got Essie Davis with a young Ned. So you got the mature Ned and the older Ned. No. And overall, I would think that the advertising posters for the story of the Kelly Gang, are quite awful. I mean, I'm just going to put it out there, folks. I mean, is it that hard to do a compelling movie poster? And apparently when it comes to the story of the Kelly Gang, it is, because none of these films really give us a good sense of what the film is about, who the market for the film is, and why we even want to see the film in the first place. Why are film posters so hard to get right? Because when you see a good film poster, it's the film has done all the hard work, hasn't it? Where you just get excited about the poster. I tell you who does good film posters. I mentioned Beetlejuice before. Tim Burton. Look at those posters for his films. Fantastic. Anyway, I don't want to get into Tim Burton, but these posters, no good. All right, so the true history of the Kelly Gang, right? And I want to talk today about success and how do we measure success, because the true history of the Kelly Gang, it starts, it gets a release. It does get a cinema release. It plays at a couple of cinemas, very, just a couple of nights here, a couple of nights there, right? Not a big release at all. And then it goes on Stan. And the question is, how do we measure a successful film? Right? Now, what did the fans think? So we'll start with the fans, right? I think success can be measured by what the people are saying. So on Rotten Tomatoes, right, which is a online site where you can put in your own reviews, it holds an approval rating of 80% based on 165 reviews, right? With an average rating of 6.9 out of 10. Right? So the approval rating, people who approve it is 80%, right? But the average rating is 6.9. Now, if you got 6.9 out of 10 for an assignment, would you be happy? Probably not. So I'll just leave it there. The site's critical consensus reads, its unusual approach won't be for all viewers, but true history of the Kelly Gang takes a distinctly postmodern look at Australia's past. Okay. What does it even mean? I don't know. This word postmodern, it seems to get used and overused in a very peculiar way. I guess by putting a mullet on Ned and with this sort of very kind of punky sort of soundtrack, which was done by Justin Kurzel's brother, Jed. It's a good soundtrack. Anyway. On Metacritic, the film has weighed an average score of 75 out of 100, and that's based on 27 critics, indicating generally favourable reviews. Okay. So 75 out of 100, 75%, that's not a high distinction. It's not a high distinction. Now, look, I'm just going to put it out there. It's a challenging film, this one. You know, it's confronting and it's challenging. You know, there's no other way of putting it out there. So it's always going to be really interesting how an audience is going to perceive this film. I think it requires a particular kind of viewing. Interestingly, that it gets sold to stand, because I think the best forum for a film like this would actually be at the cinema. I think there's something about you just have to put your phone away and just absorb yourself into the film. It's very abstract in many regards. So for a very mainstream audience, you know, perhaps these are good scores. Perhaps. Okay. Now, the thing about Ned Kelly is, right, so Ned Kelly in Australia is, you know, he is the bushranger of bushrangers. He is the most famous of all of the bushrangers. And Australia produced many bushrangers during the colonial period. But Ned Kelly, he seemed to just capture the public in a way that other bushrangers didn't. He was on the run for like 18 months, which was unheard of at the time. Right? He had a gang. Right? He was robbing banks. He was writing letters. These really kind of eloquent letters. He created this armor suit, which is like interesting. And then he got arrested, tried, and he died by the noose of hanging. All right, now the thing about Ned Kelly in Australia is everyone has an opinion. So it's either Ned Kelly was great, you know, brought down the corruption of these, you know, horrible police that were pursuing him, and, you know, he is like this kind of Robin Hood of a Australian colonial bushranging, right? Then there's the others that go, well, he was just this filthy, horrible cop killer who went around, very violent, and it was a good thing that he died and he was caught, and awful person, right? And those two positions have been at war with each other, you know, ever since Ned Kelly was on the run. And even if you go back and look at like the Argus or the Age at the time, these newspapers, they were very much positioned on Ned Kelly's a good guy that should be championed as a social bandit kind of hero, and the other sort of saying, you know, Ned Kelly, not a good guy. No. Now, the thing about the Ned Kelly films is it's a great cinema story, right? Yet to be a great film. There isn't a great Ned Kelly film yet. So if you're an upcoming filmmaker or an established filmmaker, and you want to make a film, I'd say go out and make a Ned Kelly film. Just do it. There's no great Ned Kelly film, so your film will probably be better than any other Ned Kelly film ever. And everybody knows Ned Kelly. But is that the problem, that everybody knows Ned Kelly, everyone has an opinion, and everybody wants to see that opinion represented in a film on the screen? Anyway, every time a Ned Kelly film comes out, there is an eager audience awaiting. And this film was no different, even though this film was dismissed very quickly. Okay, now the films. So these are all the films. So you've got the early films, right? You've got The Story of the Kelly Gang, 1906. The first ever feature film made anywhere in the world is in Australia, and it was about Ned Kelly. I'll say that again. The first feature film made anywhere in the world was an Australian movie on Ned Kelly. 70-minute movie. Story of the Kelly Gang, 1906. That was followed by 3 films by a Welsh director who came to Australia, called himself the Welsh Wizard. That's true. His name was Harry Southwell. He made 3 Kelly films. He made the Kelly Gang, When the Kellys Were Out, When the Kellys Rode, and they were all awful, terrible films. Oh, shocking films. That was followed by an even worse film called The Glen Rowan Affair. Now, what's the connection with those early films, ladies and gentlemen? It's about the gang, right? The Story of the Kelly Gang, the Kelly Gang, or the Kellys Road. It's about the gang of outlaws, right? No, it's the Kelly Gang. Now, in the later movies, right? Forget the gang. It's about Ned. Ned's the superstar, right? And you've got these big time stars being cast as Ned Kelly, right? So you've got Mick Jagger as Ned Kelly in the 1970 film, right? And I said at the time, and I'll say it again, Mick Jagger, very good choice of Ned Kelly, because that's kind of how people saw Ned Kelly, as this really sort of sexy, charismatic kind of person. And I know what you're thinking, Steve, Mick Jagger is in his 80s. What are you talking about? Sexy? I don't think so. Well, go and look at images of Mick Jagger in 1969 when he shot the film, and he was the superstar. He was the guy in 1969. Probably the biggest star in the world, and he was very charismatic and sexy, and all of that. I kid you not, he was all of those things. Okay. And then there was The Last Outlaw, which is a series. And then there was Reckless Kelly, Yahoo Serious. So how do you back up Young Einstein, right? Which is a huge success for Yahoo. He makes Reckless Kelly, which is a comedy about Ned Kelly in more contemporary times. And that killed his career. Yahoo, never to be seen again. What happened to Yahoo Serious? If anybody knows the whereabouts of Yahoo Serious, please let me know, because I don't really know why Yahoo Serious disappeared, because he did Young Einstein, huge success. Reckless Kelly, a bit of a flop, and then that's that. Then Heath Ledger, ooh la la, Heath Ledger. He was back for what was going to be the pinnacle, the ultimate Ned Kelly movie, and it was just a bit dull. It was a bit dull, ladies and gentlemen. And then that was followed also in 2003 by a comedy spoof on Ned Kelly called Ned by Abe Forsyth. Now, he's an actor that you may have seen in a few things, and he makes these really pretty bad comedy features. And I think Abe has some talent in various things, but my advice to Abe is don't star and direct your own movies. Probably get another director to come in and, if you want to star, do your thing. And then 2019, you got The True History of the Kelly Gang. Now, the interesting thing about True History of the Kelly Gang is they're more like the earlier films, which was about the gang. And the gang in the earlier films were like, they were proper badass criminals. They went around, they were robbing banks, and all the stuff that they just enjoy doing as an outlaw. That's like The True History of the Kelly Gang. The True History of the Kelly Gang doesn't have much to do really in common with the later movies, where Ned becomes this sort of idyllic, lovable, loved person in the world. This delicate flower who was blown very unkindly by the wind that was the Victoria Police Force. Anyway, if you want to know more about the Nick Kelly films, I highly recommend this book by Stephen Gaunson, a terrific book, which is available, ladies and gentlemen, in all good bookshops and that really shitty one in Collingwood. Also available online, and the author will sign your copy for you. Anyway, unfortunately, this book was written in 2012, before the true history of the Kelly Gang was released. But who knows? Maybe Stephen Gaunson will write a chapter and re-release the book with its additional chapter. Who knows? All right, now, True History of the Kelly Gang is based on a Peter Carey novel called True History of the Kelly Gang. This book was hugely successful. Peter Carey, very well-known and respected author. It was based on Ned Kelly's The Jerilderie Letter, which was found and put on display, as it still is, at the State Library of Victoria. This book was a massive bestseller. So the book was written in the style of Ned Kelly's Jerilderie Letter, and it represents a very kind of articulate and thought-provoking and intelligent person. I wouldn't say the film is doing the same kind of thing. It seems to be beating from a different drum, the film. It's going for a more violent attitude. But anyway, that's the source of the True History of the Kelly Gang. I would say the True History of the Kelly Gang is more like the Gregor Jordan film with Ulala Heath Ledger in that film. And and Naomi Watts in that film as well. Well, what a couple. Heath Ledger and Naomi Watts. Anyway, you can watch that film after you watch this film if you want. Anyway, so he's made this book, right? And again, we keep coming back to the idea, if you're going to make a movie and you want a bit of interest, right? Think about adaptation, right? Because you've got a ready-made market. I wouldn't think that the ready-made market, though, would have been a huge fan of this film, just because I think it's a different audience that it's going for. Anyway, True History of the Kelly Gang. It won the Booker Prize 2001. There you go. Okay, so True History of the Kelly Gang. How do you make a successful film? You get marquee stars. You get the big stars coming in. So you got George Mackay. So he's a big deal around the time of this film because 1917, the war movie done in one shot. Yeah, he's the star of that film. So he seems to, around this time, enjoy being outside with mud on him, looking very grubby. Just looks like he needs a good bath, a good clean, and a decent feed. Anyway, so he's in it. So he's a big star. Everyone's talking about him. You got Essie Davis, like I said. Essie, we're a big fan of Essie here. And Rusty Crowe, there he is, with Ned's beard. What's he doing with Ned's beard? He plays Ned's mentor, Harry Powers. And he's a bad man. He's a bad man. He taught Ned all his bad ways, his violence. We blame him. We're blaming you, Rusty. Blaming you. Anyway, I reached out to a Ned Kelly chat group because I was interested in what they thought of the film. You know, would the Ned Kelly diehards, would they embrace the film? And this is what they said. They weren't overly supportive, I've got to say, ladies and gentlemen. I quote, "The screenwriters just boganized an Australian story and hoped for the best." Yeah, okay. Boganized an Australian story. All right. Another person said never bothered. I did block out their names because I didn't want I don't know. They did say it on a public forum, but you never know. You never know. Okay. Now, one other person said it's in regard to what they thought of this film, same as what's left in the dunny when you go for a number 2 without flushing. Oh, that's it's poetry. It's poetry, isn't it? It's Australian poetry right there. Another person said, ever heard of it? Ever heard of it? So I suppose he meant never heard of it. So he's a Ned Kelly fan. He's never heard of this film coming out. Anyway, um, okay. Someone else said, I had to see it for my own satisfaction, and after I heard everyone say on it, so I was prepared. I found the first 10 minutes confronting and insulting to the memory of Ned's mum, Ellen, played by Essie Davis, who's great, but she's a hard woman in a hard country, and the whole movie towards the whole Kelly family. I hope none of the descendants saw it. I'm very surprised Russell Crowe thought it was good enough for him to be in it too. He's lost a lot of my respect doing this as an actor. It's a crap movie from me. And then somebody else says, just money to Russell. I wonder how much he was paid to do it. What's all this talk about Russell Crowe? Have people been watching Russell Crowe films in the last 15 years? I'm sorry, the Russell Crowe of Gladiator, LA Confidential, The Insider, that's great Rusty Crowe. Proof, right? Jocelyn Moorhouse, Australian film with Hugo Weaving. Terrific movie, right? Russell Crowe was killing it in the early 90s, mid-90s, even late 90s. But come on, Russell Crowe, please. He's not really, I would say a lot of Russell Crowe films in the last 10 to 20 years have been, you could argue he's just been sort of doing it for the cash. And I would also argue that this film was actually a return to Russell Crowe actually finding something of substance in this role. And this is not there in a lot of his other films. I'm sorry, Russell, if you're listening, but that's how I feel. That's how I feel. Anyway, I don't mind Russell Crowe in this film at all. He's a hard man. He's a hard man in a hard place. All right, now hipster Ned. All right. So now you might be thinking, Steve, it's a cross-dressing film. Not a problem. I've got this. Priscilla Queen of the Desert. All right, great film. Dressmaker, bit of cross-dressing in there. All right. This isn't that sort of cross-dressing. It's there's cross-dressing, but apparently in Ireland, this is an Irish tradition, right? In sort of the same period of when Ned Kelly is set, that men dressing in dresses was actually a sign of conflict and confrontation with the authorities, and men would throw on a dress when they were going out to battle with the police. Anyway, you can do your own research on that, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so instead of the classic beard, Kelly is a strawberry blonde mullet, a hipster hairdo. Yeah. He spends a good deal of the film's latter section wearing a dress of black floral lace. Yeah. His loyal followers are similarly attired, a soiled frilly gown hanging off each slender boyish frame. And Nick Cave's son is in this film as well. Nick Cave, the post-punk rock star, somewhat actor, terrible actor. Oh, terrible actor. If you want to see how bad Nick Cave is at acting, have a look at a film called Johnny Suede, where he stars opposite Brad Pitt, and Nick Cave plays like this ex-rocker mentor to Brad Pitt. Awful movie. Good haircuts. Awful movie. Nick Cave's in a blonde wig. Anyway, let's just hope his son is a better actor than his dad. Okay, now its costuming decision takes its cue from a quirk of Kerry's novel, in which members of the Kelly gang align themselves with an anti-authoritarian movement called the Sons of Steve, whose members don dresses and blacken their faces before undertaking any official business. Okay, so like I said, it has a historical connection, but also a novelistic connection. Okay, now the thing about Ned Kelly, you probably got the impression so far as, so this film is just completely made up. It's completely crap. It's just like, It's using a real person, but everything about it is not true. Well, not necessarily. I mean, they use actual locations for this. So you've got George Mackay outside the old Melbourne jail, which was just at the time called the Melbourne jail, right? And if you're an RMIT student, you might be thinking, hang on, that's the courtyard. That's the courtyard. I have lunch in that courtyard. That's the fence of that courtyard. I ate lunch there. I walk past there every morning. It's the same courtyard where Ned Kelly was. You're part of history, ladies and gentlemen. So the film was shot at the old Melbourne jail. It was also shot all around Victoria where Ned Kelly did actually appear. So there is something about locations and the use of locations. And just a quick history lesson. In the old days, right, there were bushranging tours, right, where you get on a stagecoach and you go around and you get off at certain destinations, and there would be actors and they would play out like stagecoach robberies and stuff as it appeared at that actual location. And then you get in the stagecoach and you go to the next location. How cool would that be? I want to do that tour. I don't do it anymore. That was before TV and stuff. It was a way of, really engaging with history. Anyway, films, to this degree, they kind of continue that tradition in a way, where they take you to the actual location where things happened and they restage them. Because this is what we're talking about, restaging of films. Of history. The films are restaging of history. They're not restaging of films. That would be another film, wouldn't it be? Okay, now, how do we measure success? Going back to our earlier question. All right, now, so generally, right, you got awards, critical success, reviews, social media, and box office. Now, the problem of a film on streaming services is all of that is kind of questioned and thrown out. Okay, so awards. If you're a film that streams, right, there are many awards that you're not eligible for, right? And even though this film got a small cinema release, right, it still wouldn't have been eligible for a number of other awards. So that's questionable. Well, how do you actually look at success if, it's a streaming film? The critical success, right, it's sort of changing a little bit now, but I mean, a lot of the films that were being reviewed by, newspapers and news publications and film publications and things like that, they were the films that were, opening big and wide at the cinema. They were cinema films. They weren't streaming films. And if you actually look at the box office for this film, the box office is absolutely terrible. You think, wow, this film really bombed. Well, it didn't really bomb because it was only sort of out in the cinemas for a couple of days before it went to streaming. And then what's making it even more frustrating is that the streaming companies won't release, they won't happily release the numbers of downloads and watches and things like this, which is, again, it's really frustrating when you're actually trying to write on this sort of history. Social media as well is interesting with streaming because there can be more eyes on something, but I don't really know if True History of the Kelly Gang is really going to get a social media buzz and, like I said, the box office. So how do you measure the success of the True History of the Kelly Gang? Is it a good film? Is it a film that succeeds? It might become a more personal response to that than anything you're doing it. And the tagline here, rewrite history. Yes, we're rewriting history with the True History of the Kelly Gang. All right, a couple of final things before I let you depart for greener pastures. Is the industry willing to take a hit for cultural importance? Okay, are you, tax-paying person, willing to pay for cultural importance? So, Ned Kelly is culturally important. Ned Kelly is culturally significant. If you go to the State Library of Victoria, his armour is there on display, all right? And just look at that armour. I think it weighs about 44 kilos. Imagine putting that armour on. 44 kilos. Wow. The Jewellery letter is there, some other artifacts. And if you go all around, you can actually do a Ned Kelly tour of Victoria, all right? Where you can actually stop at, Beechworth and all these other, destinations. Glen Rowan, where he did the attempted police siege. So he's really significant, right? So is it worth getting a film about Ned Kelly made? Right, so we've got it out there. We can look at it. We can discuss it as a piece of history. We can teach it in schools, or we can just talk about how much we don't like the film. Right? Is that important? Is that important enough that box office and profit doesn't matter? Okay. So what does the True History do? It gives contemporary audiences ways to think about Ned Kelly. Tells the story to a new cinema literate audience. It becomes a teaching tool. Allows Kelly to become a talking point again. Provides an attractive way to think about Ned Kelly. Now, the final question, is the industry better off or worse off because of the True History of the Kelly game? All right? Is it better to have a film like this in circulation, or is it just like was it a bad idea from the start and we should never have gone there? I'll let you answer that one. This becomes a question of value. How do we value national films when they don't succeed at the box office? Right? How successful do they have to be? Does the film have to be self-sufficient? Does the film have to have made its money back at least to be a successful film? No? Or is this actually what we're contributing to? Which is contributing to good culture. I mean, if you look at the most successful periods in any national cinema, they're often when just a lot of stuff is being made, and some become really successful, some don't become successful. But looking back, you're thinking, wow, they were doing some really interesting stuff across that. All right, so that's something else to think about. Now, this becomes a question of culture. What sort of culture do we want the Australian industry to provide? What is the responsibility and the service of the Australian film industry? Or is it just a money-making factory? And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would bid you farewell with the True History of the Kelly Gang. A truly remarkable movie. There's a lot going on in this movie. It's punk rock in colonial times with George Mackay, often without his top on, sometimes with his top on. Russell Crowe leaves his top on. And with that, I will bid you fare thee well. Bye for now.